It's Thursday. Two big events at the end of this week. As I understand it, there's new episodes of The Mandalorian coming out on your Disney Plus. So that'll be fun. My kids and I have been looking forward to that for quite some time. And then also, of course, on Saturday, we have Halloween. Get some trick-or-treating going on. Kids love candy. So going into that, totally unrelated. I every now and then I'd build up a big stack of things to catch up on, right? And whatever it may be. And I was reading through something yesterday that reminded me of something in my various corporate lives that I've been through, especially when I was in corporate strategy. And that is, when you're in there must be some name for this, but a lot of what goes on in organizations is you have your white collar workers, your office drones, which I have been in the past, and they're helping put together all the context and the information you need for a decision to be made, or they're updating the status of what's going on, which, we from a more engineering background, and especially from the DevOps Agile world, we can get all worked up about meetings are a waste and status things. But the reality is, if you're operating a multi-thousand, a 10,000, a multiple 100,000 person company, a lot of what goes on as you go up is just figuring out what's going on and making sure you have a handle on it and trying to, drive what's happening, all that sort of stuff, right? In the same way that we in the programming world have to monitor how our builds are, how tests are going, and kind of manage downward. That's what people, if you want to use the analogy, that's what the programmers of large organizations are doing. So I was thinking back to when, as a consultant and as, as the employee, whenever I've been involved in these kinds of sort of, the kind of height of it is when you have to do a readout to the BOD, the board of directors, or some other kind of very senior management thing, and you're kind of going over what your group or is doing, or what your acquisition plan is, or your strategy. And I was, I used to have I guess I still have it, but I have a 5-minute talk and a longer talk. Let me put that in. I knew I would mention this, like that I go over surviving big co's. And, there's a lot of little advice I have in there about how to kind of suck it up and just work on slides, managing your career and your sanity and things like that. Start thinking about your presentation as a document that's just been accidentally printed in landscape. But one of the things when you're working on these documents, these meetings that you encounter is, one, it's totally necessary to do what people call pre-wiring, which is, it's kind of comical to think about it, but it is valuable. You could call it consensus building and testing out, right? In the engineering world, we talk about a fast feedback loop, or as I like to call it, a small batch cycle, product market fit. And in these meetings where you're getting executives together to kind of review how a business unit is doing, or argue for an increase in budget or an acquisition, or just to be left alone, a lot of what you're doing is very similar, right? When you put together this information, you want to get as much feedback as possible on what your report is going to be, and how the meeting's going to go. And, because why find out during the meeting? And you might also be given, you'll be given the chance ahead of time to adjust it and come up with new things. So that's where this idea of pre-wiring comes in. And the odd thing is, so often what you do is, let's make up a fictional scenario. Let's say you have 3 business units at a mug company, and you want to expand. You want to start a new business unit for glassware. So it's a ceramics company, and so they produce these coffee mugs. The bulk of the business. They've started producing plates a couple of years ago, which provides a nice line of business for them. And you want to propose that, I guess glass is a little bit out of there, but you have determined that there are some synergies. You've built up the channels and the trust and the relationship to do containers, sort of cookware things, or whatever you call this stuff. And so you want to start getting into glass. So you're going to be proposing that we're going to start, we might even acquire a glass company to make glass mugs, but we're going to expand the mugs into glass. Now, you wouldn't put together an idea, a business case for that and just go present it to people, right? Like, the first thing you're going to do is go to the heads and the kind of the decision-making machine for those other two business units, the mug people and the plate people. And you're basically going to spend, I mean, in my experience, a couple of months working with them to get them on your side, to drive consensus, right? Because in most corporate settings, you're talking about a zero-sum game when it comes to corporate attention, prioritization, budgeting. Like, it's not really, there are very few exceptions, even in tech companies that throw off billions of dollars. I mean, there's a finite amount of money, right? And so if you're getting money, someone else is not getting that money. So for most corporate decisions, it really is zero sum between actors, and, local optimization and caring about the whole blah, 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 right? That's just not how things actually work for most people. So you don't want to be in the meeting and have the people in the other business units kind of tank your idea because you're taking money away from them. So you need to go figure out what their concerns are, what they want. So you go pre-wire. Now, this is the detail that was making me think of this, is they often will have their own things, their own desires and their own take on it. And whether or not you agree with their own take, their own information, you have to fold that into this process, into your presentation or your document. You have to kind of be nice. And so, the mug ceramic people might have some wackadoodle in your perspective thing about mugs. Who knows what it is? I can't even think of something. And you just got to kind of call out to it and speak to it, right? Like, you can't ignore it. I mean, even if it's a good idea, then that's great. I mean, that's the thing you often find with this sort of pre-wiring and including the concerns of other people, is sometimes they have great ideas. More often than not, it's just some stuff you have to put up with. Because, I have often found in large organizations, instead of worrying about what other business units are doing, there's always a lot of work to improve your own business rather than meddling in what other people do. But you will probably find yourself having to make reference to and describe how you're working with other business units, and even kind of describe how they are going to coast off of your success, right? So as you expand into the glass mug business, there may be certain shapes of mugs that can also be applied back to the ceramic mugs, and there might be some competency, some skills that the ceramic mug people care about that you need to praise or somehow fold into what you're doing. So when you're trying to change how your organization is functioning, or kind of put some initiative ahead of time, you need to make sure that you understand who you're competing with, your peers, and spend a lot of time pre-wiring with them, talking with them, getting their input, going over the decks that you have or the ideas, right? I mean, again, a presentation is just the medium, the manifestation of your ideas. If you're super cool 6-page memo person, whatever, same thing. If you're extemporaneous, never move off the first slide person, fine. But just whatever the idea is, make sure that you are at least, if not getting agreement and consensus, that at least they know what it is, right? So that they don't get shocked in the meeting and start to get their dander up, as we say, and start to object to it. Now, another thing that comes up is, especially if you are not the primary business units or the older ones, you're trying to do something new, is oftentimes those people will have the ear of the executives, of the people that you are trying to get permission from, more than you do. And so you want to make sure that as they're talking with people, just in the hallway or in their own meetings, that they are speaking on your behalf, or at least not poisoning and shooting down your ideas when you're not there to defend them, right? So you're constantly in a corporate setting worrying about, and you can think of this in a more growth-oriented sort of group thing way, right? Like, we're all in this together, so we all kind of sort of need to know what each other is up, and know enough and believe enough in what we're both doing, and have learned from each other, collaborated, to kind of help each other out, whether we're there or not. Or if you're in a darker, more cynical, more pragmatic and realistic organization, you just want to make sure that people are on your side enough so that they don't tank your ideas when you're not there to stand up for them. So, I mean, that's a little kind of vague without solid examples, but that's what we do here on a daily basis. But always think about whatever peers I have that are going to be contending for what I have, or be in the meeting with me, or even if they're not in the meeting, I should probably go talk with them and work with them, have a good relationship with them and get their input on what I'm doing. Now, next, are you interested in changing the way that your organization works? Or do you want to explore new ways of doing things? Boy, have we got something for you. You can not only can you learn, starting from the bottom, things like Kubernetes well, and if you remember a couple of episodes, we had Bosky on to talk about how great training that we have if you're a VI administrator, you're a virtualization or traditional administrator. She's got some really great courses on understanding Kubernetes and kind of training yourself up for free. We have if you go to kube.academy, you can find that out. And also, if you're more of the developer bent, you can go to tanzu.vmware.com/developer and find that out as well. And finally, if you really want to get started and kind of sort out what your priorities are, kind of discover the best projects to work on to get started and kind of get the ball rolling. A lot of idioms I'm using this time. You can sign up for an hour-long or a day-long or a half-day-long discovery workshop where, if you remember the episodes where I've talked with Robbie and other people, you start to systematically go through what should we be doing? How do we map our corporate priorities to something as straightforward as writing code? How do we go all the way from the BOD down to strategy and priorities that are set to actually what happens day to day with the coding and select things out, whether we're doing new things or we're modernizing our existing apps, whatever it may be. Now, all of that stuff, if you go to cote.pizza, that's cote.pizza, you can not only get free copies of the 2 books I have on all these topics and a couple of other links. I should really update these, but you can also sign up for those hours by clicking on the Software Development Office hours and just go check them. Or you can always email my buddy, Codem, at vmware.com. That's COTEM at vmware.com. As always, not sure who this Codem is. I assume it's something like Carl Odom or something like that. Beats me. But I get all of their emails, so you can always email Codem at vmware.com if you want to talk more. Now, to close out the second thing, I had one of those, check in on you, how's things going meetings with someone the other day. And, I may seem like a cheery, optimistic person, but deep down inside, I am a deeply cynical, dark person who, typically just wants to light everything on fire and burn it down to the ground. But I'm pretty good at hiding that from people. So when it comes to these rando, status meetings not status meetings, just check-in meetings, I'm generally pretty cynical about it. But I have to say, pretty much every single time I have them, it's actually pretty uplifting and nice, right? Like my default position is to think that things like that are just annoying. But generally, those meetings go very well, which you think I should learn about. And, it's nice to just talk with people, especially nowadays when I don't travel as much. I mean, I haven't worked in an office for a long time, so I don't sort of miss that. But I was talking with another, a European former coworker, and we realize how much we miss kind of just getting out there and seeing things. So it actually is nice to just have an open-ended, no agenda call with someone to kind of check in on each other and see how things are going. And it's a good reminder also that, I don't know, you have bidirectional appreciation and you're just kind of in a group working with each other. I think, especially with a lot of the topics that we talk about here, and by we, I mean me, but also the guests that I have, we're always interested when it comes to change and digital transformation and cloud native and software. There's always this movement towards better, like actual activities and work that you're doing. But there's a tremendous amount of corporate life, of work life, and also life on its own where you're just sort of sitting around where nothing's happening. Not so much that nothing's happening, but you got to breathe. And there's moments between action happening and, just stuff, right? There's a lot of, I don't even know a non-judgmental way of putting it, but there's a lot of dead time that just needs to be filled. There's just a lot of living, right? You're just kind of living and passing through time, as they used to say in that Buffalo movie. But it's nice to fill it in with happy, nice people and just to kind of know that things are cool. So, maybe I should start looking forward to these little check-in meetings. I know I have a lot of, if you haven't done this, pro tip that I learned way back at Dell when I worked in my white-collar work there is I learned this actually from he was the the senior vice president of strategy. This guy Dave Johnson, and I observed that he was always having like meetings with people he'd met over the decades, just to kind of check in with them. And it is valuable to just kind of keep that communication going, especially if everyone's distributed out, instead of being in the office. And so I generally schedule meetings with various people I want to keep up with, and also who are valuable to be friends with in a corporate context. And we can help each other out with the type of work we do and things. But a lot of checking in with them, every week or every 3 weeks, as I more commonly do, is just to be like, hey, how's it going? Just to kind of keep that human part of things going. Drive that consensus through friendliness. So maybe that's a good takeaway item. If you don't have any reoccurring meetings with no agenda for just like 30 minutes or something with people that if you ran into them over lunch or in a hallway, you would get distracted and spend a pleasant time talking with them, you should schedule those. Just set them up. They'll be fine, and it'll make your work life better. Well, with that, as always, this has been another Tanzu Talk Daily. You can find all the archives in YouTube, the videos, where I edit out the nonsense about tweeting things at the beginning. If you go to kote.io/Tanzu Talk. Now, you can also just go to tanzu.tv and find the Tanzu Talk thing. But, however you like to do it. I won't have a lot of show notes this episode. I'll put a link to my Surviving Big Company stuff. But, just go check it out. You can get the show notes. And you can always help me out by telling someone else about these videos if you like, by subscribing to our little channel there, or, I don't know, sharing the videos. I just want eyeballs, people to pay attention to. Halloween's coming up. What we used to do is you can, it's kind of difficult, but you can peel a bunch of grapes and then blindfold people and tell them it's a bowl of eyeballs. That's fun to do. I don't actually know if eyeballs are slimy or not, but one must imagine. So kind of like, I think everyone, when you look at a snake, it looks like its skin is all wet and moist, but I think generally they're drier than they look. Maybe eyeballs. Couldn't say. But yeah, with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.